and welcome to Whole Soul School and Foundation. I'm Marie Mohler, and I'm an author, intuitive, and co-founder of Whole Soul School and Foundation. I'm here with my co-host, Lacy Frazer, and fellow co-founder of Whole Soul School and Foundation. And we're joined by Flower Diamond, our fantastic mystic poet for Whole Soul School and Foundation. And this is our Global Light Spotlight podcast for the month of November 2019. And we're so excited to be sharing the messages and sharing a little bit more about who Flower Diamond is and her talents and how we came to connect with you, Flower, through Whole Soul School and Foundation. So a warm welcome to you this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just so grateful to be here with you too. It's just wonderful. Thank you.
Hopefully a lot of our viewers and our listeners, I am sure, have been seeing our myriad of Facebook posts that include some of your incredible writing. And we're so grateful that you have agreed to contribute to Whole Soul School and Foundation and our mission moving forward. And so we want to welcome all of our listeners, all of our viewers, all of our Facebookers, and obviously this is a real treat for us because this is the first time that we're really getting to see you and speak in person, kind of in person. So thank you.
Yes, we're on opposite coasts this morning. So Flower was gracious enough.
Yes.
She's here earlier in the morning, and it's about midday for us on the East Coast. She's on the West Coast. And, really when we create our messages for Whole Soul School and Foundation, we have themes that a lot of our listeners know. We have themes each month. And Flower comes in and sprinkles a special kind of magic, right, with your writings. And I want to ask you a little bit about that. When did writing become a part of your life?
Oh, that's a really good question. Thank you. It's a beautiful question. I think writing was always my secret. It was very below the radar for me. And I didn't even know it was something I could do. And over a lifetime, I remember as a child, I would just put a pen on a piece of paper, use the pen, and I would just leave it there, and nothing happened for forever. But it was just was a secret even to myself. And as we awaken, we discover those real secrets that are our gifts, and that is what I'm grateful for. The writing is just it was an entryway into understanding myself, which is the real secret, the whole soul part of it.
The whole soul part of it, right?
It was kind of like your own portal that was waiting to be opened.
Absolutely. Yes, it really, and it connects the whole soul while you write. That's what I would say is what attracted me to what you two are doing, because it's not really channeling. It is, but it's not. But it's connecting my whole self, all parts of my being, into and translate to poetry.
Yeah, translates into poetry. Exactly.
And in a remarkable way. I mean, I think the energy of the words and what you weave together and what you integrate and the metaphors, and it's just so beautiful and very
soul touching.
Yeah.
It is. It touches the soul. And so I bathe in your poems, and they're frequencies. It's an energy that you paint onto the page, really. And
Absolutely.
So at a certain point when you were younger and you just put the pen to paper and nothing else was coming through.
Nothing happened.
Right? But in a way, like you were saying, it's a portal, and it's like you felt the invitation, but you didn't almost know how to accept it for a time. You had to journey with that.
That's beautifully put. Yes.
And at a certain point, the pen started moving, right? At a certain point, you started to become more of a scribe for your own messages and your own soul's wisdom that wanted to come through. Yeah.
Yes. And that's really the practice, is what do you do with it now? What am I going to do with
Yeah.
this?
Right? Once it starts flowing and you accept the invitation, if we use that metaphor, right? It's like a faucet that just could be on all the time. And so it's a beautiful place for you to create from, I'm sure. Like, was it a part of your healing journey? What was the part that activated it for you? So what took you from the place of pen on paper to the place where messages began to start to come through?
That's a very good question. Um, there was a definite before and after point for me, before knowing and not knowing, and like, and knowing. um, I I just remember sitting on a balcony here in San Francisco, in one of the places I lived, and I don't even remember how it occurred, but I hadn't had any spiritual training or anything. In fact, I was quite opposite. I was very resistant to any kind of teachings of any sort, and was would very not very respectful of it either. But then I just sat down, and I was just had a notebook, and I had an experience, and I heard, write down the words we say to you. And of course, dear one is a term that many people that are translating words here. And so that was I became the dear one. Like so
Yeah.
many of us.
Yeah, you made a
And
connection in those
yeah,
words. The connection was made.
yes.
It's so powerful.
And at once. Yeah. And then it took me 10 years to unpack it.
Wow. Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
It does. It can take some time, because we have to start understanding what that connection is inside ourselves, and inviting us into that deeper experience of ourselves, which is what also the invitation was, right? Was to know yourself at a deeper level.
Oh yeah, that was kicking and screaming as I went. Because yeah,
we don't all go willingly, there can be a
no.
great deal of resistance.
I like to think of when the door opens, the light comes through, and so does the debris as well, because there's no judgment, so it all comes in.
Yes,
and then you've got to sort through all of that,
like
it reminds me of this is a sort of a strange metaphor, but the visual I got when you were talking was, when you go panning for gold, and you fill you fill the sieve, or whatever it's called, the pan, with it, and it comes up a ton of dirt and silt and all kinds of things. And as you shake it and you discern it and you're gentle with it, and
gentle.
You have to be very gentle and kind with it, because that gold could fall through the cracks.
Yes, I saw the same image when you said that, right before you said that. So
Really?
we're on the same. We're in a beautiful circle here. Yeah, it's exactly it, and discernment. That's discernment, is shaking gently, always gently.
And it's a journey unto itself, is figuring out how to take a journey that otherwise we might be resistant to, or is even traumatic or challenging, or there's things that we just don't want to look at. How do we convert that and make it a gentle experience? And in my experience, because I had my own, I don't know, version of kicking and screaming and resisting in my awakening journey, but over time we learn how to almost, in my experience, we learn almost to become friends with even the shadow and the darkness. We befriend it over time. It's almost like a bully in a schoolyard, that over time we realize that bully is us. And
yes.
Right. And then we realize that the bully has untended needs, unaddressed issues and traumas, and things that were never acknowledged and honored for what they needed. And that is, like you said, it was a 10-year journey for you, right? It often is. And it's ongoing, right? It's still ongoing, I'm sure, because it is for me. as well. It's, there's layers.
It really is. And yes, acknowledged. And I haven't met anything that didn't want a poem written about it.
Mm.
Everything wants a poem.
Yes.
Everything in your life would like a poem.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, I think at some point I either said it to Marie or I said it to myself, but I said, I wonder if she can actually speak not in poetry, not in poem form, because I've seen you put everything and anything in a poem. And so
everything goes in it. Yeah.
And I'm wondering, do you think in poem? Is it poetry? Do you think in poetry form? Is that the right language? Do you?
Well, when I'm communicating through poem, I know I'm not getting in the way, and I find it's my form of spiritual hygiene, where I write a poem to somebody. I would prefer to do that instead of giving advice. Is to write a poem. I think the poems are the greatest answer I could give anybody.
Wow.
Because it is it's a tool of the sifting for gold, where the poem will start you someplace and it'll take you to the place you need to go. So you get that gold through the process of sifting through every line or every letter and every sound in the poem. And it's how I'm able to take my resources and connections and share it impeccably with somebody without my parts of me that don't know the right way or would want to push somebody in a way. The poems are the perfect energy to share with somebody.
Well, and for
gets
our
me out of the way.
Yeah, I was going to say, and for our listeners, that there's different ways of writing, but I think when you engage this sort of higher self connection, this deeper soul connection with yourself, and you write poetry, it's not like you sit there with your pen to paper and you strain to hear, to figure out the right words. What we're talking about is this deeper soulful connection where you just said, you literally get out of the way. I think that's where you sign a lot of your poems XFD, which I think you shared with me at one point. The X meant flower getting out of the way. And this is coming right from spirit. This is inspired. This is an inspired message, like coming from spirit.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
It's really an energy medicine.
Yes. Some people have said the poems are medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Wow. You guys are awesome.
They are, and we feel them every month when I do go. I love how we're talking about that metaphor of sifting for the gold, but as you do go line by line, I feel like an energy is settling inside my soul in a beautiful way. And I think it's medicinal. And in our culture, we haven't talked about that much yet, but in our culture, in schools, they've been starting to edge the arts out, right? Edge that creative expression out. If the ego, I think it was Wayne Dyer talks about this, that the ego, EGO, stands for edging God out. Our culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if have you heard of that before? No,
that's a good one.
Yeah, that's Wayne Dyer. And it's like we've as a culture, as a global culture, in this time of denser energies on the planet, we've been edging the arts out. So EAO, I guess. and we have to, and that's when spirit comes knocking and comes and recollects some of us to bring the arts back, because through the arts, that's where the expression of our spirit often wants to come through. And when that's not been a part of our educational experience for many of us, or it certainly somehow has been less and less valued in the school systems, and there's less and less funding for that, more and more people are growing up without the beauty of that experience. And that is a go-to place when challenges arise, right? It's part of the culture of dis-ease I think we have in our world today, is that we don't oftentimes know that bridge to reconnect. So when courageous people like you go through their own journey truly, and even though they go through their own resistance, right, you begin to start allowing it to flow through, and as you live it, you give other people permission to do that too, which is part of the medicine. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. That was beautifully descriptive of
Yeah.
how important it is to be creative with your soul.
Yeah.
Play with the soul.
Play with the soul.
Well, and the
Yeah.
soul is the universal energies. And when we can tap into that wisdom, that sort of all-knowing, pure positive energy, it comes through us in all different kinds of ways. You know, it comes through you in your poems and your poetry language, and it comes through Marie in her soul readings and channelings, and it comes through me in a different way, in more of a teacher kind of way.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a beautiful and special thing to number one, have had the light turned on in all of us in however that happened, and then to be able to be agents of change and help other people help flip their light switch on, because we all have this capability in some way, shape, or form. We just have to tune into it. So I just I can't get off the feeling of when I said energy medicine to you, it's really almost it's therapeutic, and it's nearly prescriptive. Like if somebody could seriously,
Yeah.
as much as I could, prescribe for somebody to go to an acupuncturist or a healing touch practitioner, I would consider referring somebody for poetry medicine,
Yeah.
as
Wow.
sort of like an
Right?
insight, self-awareness, insight-driven therapeutic tool.
That is beautiful. It is like light switch medicine.
Yes.
It is.
I like that. Yes.
It
That's a new
is.
modality. We just coined it here today.
Right, you heard it first on Whole Soul School and Foundation with Flower Diamond.
Right.
And truly, the world needs more of these doses of this kind of magical energy, and these invitations to rejoin and reconnect with our spirit. And what I love about poetry is that the messages can get in there, and they don't have to be threatening. It doesn't have to be this big work project, right? It's kind of like a bath or a shower of light or an Epsom salt bath, where we just allow ourselves to be soothed in the experience of it and bathe in that energy, which again brings in the medicinal qualities of what you bring through. And I wonder, do you ever in your journey now, as somebody who does bring through this poetry, what would you say to somebody who is going through a challenge, who might say, well, this is what a lot of people say, right? I'm not an artist. Well, I'm not a writer, right? I don't do those things. That's not me. And I think that's a lot of how our ego, the edge got out part of us, right, operates to try and keep us away from those artistic expressions that can actually be very soothing for the soul. And so one of the things that we obviously want to bring to our listeners' attention in this conversation is accessing beautiful poetry for the soul that comes through people like Flower Diamond. We all seek out artwork and music and other forms of art to soothe the soul and inspire us in our homes and the colors we choose and the things we spend time with. But in addition to accessing that through people's work and writings and books and things like that, what would you say to somebody who claims I'm not an artist, I don't do those things, when we know at a deeper level, when we find a way to let these things in journaling, any kind of writing, right, connects us deeper with our soul presence and our heart center. And I just want to say one more thing, and I'm going to give you a chance to answer that question. But I remember being told when I was a scribe that our hand chakras are the most directly connected to our heart chakra. So when we're literally writing with our hands, we're actually directly connected to our heart center. And so when people have given up writing, or they've given up art making, or making things with their hands, we've disconnected from the medicine of what that does for our soul presence to connect deeper with ourselves. So I just be curious to hear what you would think as somebody who resisted too. You know, is there anything you might share with our listeners just to say what it's like to just get started?
I think I'll get out of the way and see what poem comes up. What would be the question or word exactly?
I might say engaging inner artistry. That's not one word, but art.
Yeah. So let me see if we can do a poem on the spot.
Ooh,
I've
I like
arranged
it.
that.
All right.
Let's answer and poem. So,
Yeah.
what was the question one more time?
So the flavor of the question is, how would we inspire, or what would be a message for somebody who thinks they're disconnected? So speaking to a person who feels disconnected and how art connects them, and
Okay.
writing connects them.
Okay. So let's see the poem that comes forth. So it says, so to be a light of your own for yourself, to follow the path that truly begins with you and ends with you, that is the highest form of love to the self.
Mm.
It is, isn't it? It
Yeah,
is.
that's
and
creativity. Yeah.
It's connectivity.
and allowance comes, you know, when I hear that, I feel the word allow, you know, because so many people feel disconnected, but they are knowing something different inside of them. There's some kind of nudging occurring, but at the same time they're not knowing how to allow it in.
Yeah.
So let's look at the word to allow.
Yes.
So let's see what poem comes through for that. So
Perfect.
to allow is opening your heart to that true and fruitful being that you began with.
Whole.
Whole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Perfect. Right? We
Yeah.
come perfect. We come
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
We come
Yeah.
perfect, and we come allowing, and we come receiving. And I think there is, like, even just in the energy, if listeners are watching, look at our expression and look at how Flower, when she connects, she closes her eyes and you can see her, we see you actively listening inside. It's not your outer ears that you're listening with. You're listening from the inside out. And that's the part where we are whole. That's where we can connect with that light. And that's what does have talent. So even if a school system or a teacher or an assignment or some trauma from your life where you were trying to create something and someone in your life didn't appreciate it or didn't support it or support you to express yourself in that way, there's a restorative process through that art of allowing, through that art of just allowing yourself to take whatever steps, whether it's a conscious breath, whether it's just taking a moment and closing your eyes and being willing to listen inside, to the higher messages that want to come through, that want to bathe us with that love and that appreciation and that perfection. And so the world, as you know, Flower, can get really busy, and it can get really noisy really fast. You know, we all go to sleep at some point every day, and we wake up from that place of quietness and stillness and connecting at some level with who we really are when we're sleeping. And then we wake into the world of noise and distraction and busyness and schedules and the way this world is. And I see writing and poetry and art making and creativity as one of the ways that we have that still point in our day. Whether, you know, even just people who are listening to this and saying, well, I don't know how to connect to that, but I'd say, do you write email every day? Right? Do you connect with somebody else in your day, either through your job or in your personal life? So, you know, when you're writing, you can make it maybe not a poem like Flower does, but make it a medicine for the person that you're connecting with. You can connect to a deeper message, and just think consciously about the words you're using. How are you communicating what you're saying? And if you think about that, communicating through your hands, through the emailing, however you're doing that, from your heart to their heart, it would be, our world would be having a different conversation, wouldn't it, Flower? Like,
it's beautiful. I mean, what came up as a short poem from what you were talking about was that for those of us who are in situations where we can't be creative, or we think, we're not, it is even an unfinished poem holds truth. That almost makes me want to cry.
wow. Right? It's so true. And there's yeah.
Well, and it holds the
There's
answer.
a lot of suffering, and yeah. So it's for anybody who feels, I'm gonna get out of the way and just say, if it's an unfinished, even an unfinished poem holds truth. That's, how could I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That is, it says so much. And when you say that, it reminds me, Wayne Dyer has come into several of our podcasts, Flower. So he must be hovering around Whole Soul School and Foundation. Everybody listening should say hello to Wayne Dyer right now.
Hey, man.
Oh, hey, Wayne.
Aloha.
But I remember him, Lacy, you might remember what film it was, but I feel like he talks about, he read some book that, the message that he heard in that story was, I don't want to die with my music still in me. What was that?
The story of Ivan Illich.
The story of Ivan Illich. And what was that? Was that in a film that he shares that?
Yeah, it was in The Shift.
Wow.
Oh, in The Shift. And so that's that, what you were just saying. If you were to say, what was the phrase you just said?
Even an unfinished poem holds truth.
Our music inside us holds truth. And I think, and those unfinished poem, like the music waits. It's right there for anybody. It waits. It waits. It waited all that time with your pen on the paper, right?
Yeah.
It waited for you to journey some of that debris that was sometimes fun and sometimes not so fun. But it waits because it's ready at all times to emerge through us when we can allow it, which is some of the themes that we're talking about today. And I find that when I tune into your poetry that you so generously give to us and our audience here at Whole Soul, it's just magic. And when we feel that, so when we tune into that, it's inviting our music. You are inviting our music to emerge and just to allow it. And even if it feels trapped, to just allow yourself in the feeling of that there's truth in the trappedness. There's truth in anything that we're experiencing. And if we just are willing to allow the magic of the knowing of what's coming through us in our feelings and in our awareness, in that connection, that's where the magic happens. And sometimes it might be a release, right? It might be a therapeutic release where we let something go when we allow the connection. But it also can be an opportunity for greater expression of something that we were, muting down or pushing away. And so I felt that feeling of Wayne Dyer, and we're all trying to listen for the music that's inside us. And we may have some challenges or traumas that for some reason keep it boxed up and contained. And we say things like, I'm not artistic. I don't know how to do those things. That's just not who I am. Those are stories that at some point somebody told us that, because we're all musical and we're all artistic and we all have gifts. Yes. And I think connecting with you, I don't know how long we've been connected. It's definitely been the last year, but I think it's maybe probably 2 years now, maybe. But if
eons.
Yeah, through time and space.
Through time and space. And so I just feel like I bathe in your words and your messages that come through on many levels in the work that you bring. And they are, so as Spirit invited you with the pen for all that time, your poetry invites people into that space inside themselves. And so
I was going to ask Flower, how do you, obviously you write poems for us, which is amazing. How do you express or work with or use your poems in everyday life?
That's a really good question. Thank you. That's awesome. You know, this lately when I have a lot of projects going on with poetry. But one that is very exciting right now is I'm creating a poem grid of San Francisco. So what I'm doing is I have a map of San Francisco, and every intersection of the city I am writing a poem for.
Wow.
So the title, you know, would be for I live on 48th and Judah Street here in San Francisco. So I just write that cross section on a piece of paper, and then then I write the poem about that. So I'm creating a poetry grid on the city.
Wow.
And so might I assume that that the poem is really speaking to the energy of that intersection? Is that at some level, or is it something different?
I would say that since I live here in San Francisco, I'm connected to it. And I am looking at myself through each intersection, which are portals, right? There's a lot going on in those intersections.
Yeah.
I could probably write 1,000 poems for each intersection, but that's for another lifetime. But anyway, right now, let's just do one. So I'm really looking at myself and my connection to the land or whatever shows up on each corner. And they're not long poems, but it's almost, I'm just learning about crystals. So that's interesting that brought that up. I'm just this past 2 weeks, I have never had crystals, and my house is full of crystals. And I thought, oh, well, people do crystal grids. I don't even understand what the grid is, but I just decided what I can do is put poems on a map. And I would say it is my connection to the personality of the city and what wants to be heard at each intersection.
Wow.
And to listen to it and acknowledge it. And I'm really not quite sure what I'm doing with it.
Yeah.
But it gives me a structure, because there's so many things. Everything wants a poem. Everything. Your dinner, you could write 1,000 poems about your kitchen. I mean, everything, the spices, everything wants a poem. So this is just, I'm always looking for ways to organize the collection of the poetry. So that's why it's fun with you guys, because you give me a topic and I can go with that. And so, and then I write until I hear that I'm done for that, because I could just keep writing all the time. But so this grid work is very interesting. I'm not sure what is going to come forth for it, but I feel like it is supporting the city. I feel like it's supporting the people that live here through my own acknowledgement of it. Sometimes we either have our head in the sand or in the clouds. And so this is a way for me to kind of really literally ground my perception of where I live. And I mean, the poems will say it better, but
well, you're giving all that energy a voice. And I think when you say everything wants a poem, energy wants a voice in our lives again. Right? And you are just a great example and messenger of that message, that, there's so much that wants to reconnect with us again, and you so brilliantly listen. And it's so great when you say, I don't really know what this project is yet, but like a great channel does, you still listen. And it takes form as you listen. The poems take shape and become the message as you listen, because you could have gotten messages and say, well, I'm not writing that down. And they would be lost, right? There's a lot of lost energy that's not given a voice.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating that Marie, somewhere in the very beginning of this interview, made the comment that you are holding, you are anchoring the grid in San Francisco. I think that was what your words were.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I think
Yeah.
you tuned right into
Yeah.
she's literally doing that in this project,
Yeah.
much like crystals do. I mean, we have we know a lot of people who use crystals to ground, to clear energy, ground energy, wipe out negative energy, that kind of stuff. So it feels like your poetry and your words and what you're bringing through is doing a very similar kind of thing. It's giving it a voice, but it's also clearing and cleansing. Probably got multi-layer purpose to it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what they do, but they're pretty potent.
Yeah.
Poems.
They truly.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so I have my work cut out for me.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That could keep you busy for probably the rest of your life, I imagine.
Every crystal wants a poem.
Right.
Right.
Wants a poem. I mean, really, I don't get bored. And will say, I will just spout out poems as I'm walking my dog. There is a lot of poetry that's out there that was not written down. And I don't know where those poems go,
but they were given sound and right. They were given that voice. And I think there's so much value. It's just like a prayer. Lots of people don't necessarily hear our prayers, but sounding them into form by us being the instrument of that sound, which is connecting to Wayne Dyer again and the music inside us. When we're sounding anything into form, singing it, speaking it, sharing it in some way, and through art and through writing, we're bringing it into this world where this world has lost some of that. We are having to bring it back. And a lot of I'm not going to go off on a tangent here, but a lot of indigenous cultures would dance their prayer. They would dance their sound. They would sound their dance, right? It was all part of what they knew to move that energy through themselves. And we've just kind of gotten away from that, but connections like these and conversations like these that are happening more and more on the planet again, I think people are beginning to wake up and awaken to remember the value of these gifts that we have that are free. They're free. They're inside us. They don't cost a thing.
Totally. That's the beautiful thing about poetry is that it's free. It's very accessible.
Yes.
And you don't even need a paper and pen. You can sing it, like you said. You can sing these poems and you can pass the poems down through song. And I think that's how I'm getting them. It's being passed down, but through my whole soul. We don't have to look outside of ourselves to get the creativity itself. It's we have this library ready to go. Last night I was thinking about these questions you might pose, and it was like, well, you just open the refrigerator and pull out what you want.
Right.
That's it. That's just it's a fully stocked fridge. So if you're hungry, just open it up, take what you want, gobble it up.
That's right. And there's an abundance of whatever you need. There's an abundance of those gifts.
But you have to have, I use a lot, and when I teach, I use the metaphor of the all-you-can-eat buffet, and it's all there for you. And there's some people who don't even have an awareness that there's an all-you-can-eat buffet in front of them. And then there are some people who will kind of be nervous and not know and might go take a couple samples of a couple things and maybe taste it. And then there's people who will fill their plate and take it in and eat the meal and savor it and digest it and share it, so that it's just beautiful that we can all connect together at the table. Go back to the metaphor where you started, which is the Thanksgiving table between us, where we can enjoy the feast of of goodness and awareness and words and soul evolution and all of that. So I didn't know, Flower, if you wanted to talk a little bit about your website that you are creating.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. That is a project I'm working on that I will announce when it's ready to launch, but it will be a place for people to come, read poetry, ask questions, and I will respond in a poem. I will have a book to help people work with issues. The title is I Am the Smoke, is the name of the website. And as you were saying, you know, some people don't feel like they can be creative or they're afraid. Well, I would say the focus of this website is going to be that I take you off the hook of that when you come to my website, that I will take responsibility for your blockages, and that through you asking me questions that I will use my whole soul to answer, and provide a space where people can find the part within them that is now free to express themselves. And because the website I'm building is to help people work with the process of quitting smoking. But to me, smoking is also thinking. It's our body. The smoke is the shadow work that lots of people talk about. It's our environment that is smoking. It just goes on and on and on as every poem keeps going. But the website I'm building is to provide a place for people to come and take a break, open the fridge.
Yeah, right.
And I'll take responsibility for any blocks. And that is this website is here as a process for me to look at myself through other people and write up the poem, whatever people come up with, you know. And I can write a poem for anything.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of anything.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a warrior site.
That is fantastic.
Is.
That is so
chills,
exciting.
right?
I know. What a service.
Well, and I felt when you were first talking about the new site that I felt the feeling of mirrors of liberation, that you're like really reflecting the things in people that want to be let go so that they can find the gems, they can find the gold inside. And your poems can be that beautiful reflection of a letting go or an affirmation of something that's coming back to stay. Right? It's beautiful. It's a beautiful service and mission, like you said. It is. It's warrior work.
Yeah.
It's right. It's warrior work to open the doors for light to come in again. And and people are looking for those sacred spaces. They are. And so it's beautiful that you felt the nudge to create that, and you're, you know,
it's taking my time to do it. Taking my time. And that's the beauty of working with the Whole Soul School and Foundation, as you've given me a platform to share my poetry that I wasn't able to prepare for myself.
Yeah.
And so this year it's just, I mean, wow, you guys. You format my poetry, you put it out into the ether and the websites, and I don't know where it goes to, but you know, the people you're reaching, I could not have reached without you two. And it's just, I'm so blessed and grateful for you.
And we are as well. And just when you were talking about that, the portal that we open to you, you're now I Am the Smoke, and your other projects are opening that for others. And that's all a part of the rippling of the goodness that really is meant to be unfolding on this planet. There's a lot more of that wants to come through, and we're like the portal holders, you know.
And you are the foundation. You really have that golden foundation that supports people like me.
Yeah.
You know, to have a place that is grounded as you rebuild. You know, and now we have a front door. A foundation and a front door.
We're getting there.
a building
we'll have a
together.
roof and some Wi-Fi, right? It'll happen. But it doesn't. It comes, I think we were talking about a few things before the podcast started, actually, but it comes from these little steps that we take that creates the bigger change, and that creates opportunities for change at the very least, which creates big change. It's the opportunity that we're given and we seek and we find. And so that's what we've been doing, with you, and the grace of how you give us your amazing insights and energies in the poems. And so I want to thank our listeners for joining us today. And I want to, if anybody's curious about Flower Diamond's poems and you're seeing this video for the first time, you can find a lot of her work on Whole Soul School and Foundation.org's website. I need to get more of the posts to the website because they're not all posted there, but they're on our social media platforms. So we post twice a week on Facebook, and every month we post a good number of Flower Diamond's amazing poems. And so if you're looking for a little medicinal dose of just some upliftment or some positive reflection of who you really are and the journey that we're all on to remember who we really are, tap into our Facebook page. Find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. I don't know if we're anywhere else, but we're on podcast platforms. You can listen to this.
We're everywhere.
We're everywhere. You can find us definitely on Spotify and iHeart Radio and iTunes. And so you can tune into this podcast and a number of our podcasts that are all about educating, enriching, integrating, and liberating the soul, and also touching people whose lives have been impacted by literal incarceration. So a lot of what we're talking about is helping people to set themselves free from the inside out. And I think that's another thing that your poems do, Flower, is it's part of that process and that scaffolding of spiritual support for people in their journeys, remembering who they really are. And so
wow, I just made a connection there. Sorry, just like, what if we had a prison project that involved writing poems
poetry
for
beautiful
people who are in prison, and it would help give them insight somehow.
Wow.
Anyway, we can talk about that later.
We should talk about
it. I love it.
Right?
Love it.
Because that's huge, and more and
Brick
more
by brick.
Yeah, exact brick by brick, and
Yeah.
it comes from insights like this, and it comes from connections like that insight might not have come through had we not been in this conversation and connecting in this way. That's when spirit kind of says, oh, perfect.
Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha.
This is an opportunity tonight. We got him. So thank you for joining us, Flower. Thank you to all of our listeners joining us in this conversation today. We will certainly have Flower join us again on Whole Soul. It should certainly at the very least be an annual, because she's a very valued team member for us here at Whole Soul School and Foundation. And we just invite anybody, if you want to support this work, if you want to support the work we're doing to get these messages to people whose lives have been impacted by incarceration and to share these messages, you can go to our website at www.wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org and make a donation. Big or small, any size helps us to continue this work. So thank you, blessings, and have a fabulous rest of November 2019. And we'll see you in more podcasts to come. So have a great day, everyone. Thank you, Flower.
Thank you.